What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of BookTube. I'm your host, Mr. Ahamad. Thank you so much for coming back to my classroom. It's always a pleasure to have you here listening to me talk about books. Today, I have a very special treat. Now, I know in the past I've mentioned that I wasn't a reader growing up, and I've only read comics, and then I kind of talk about how stories are different, and but I want everyone to understand something. I want to make something very clear. I don't have a beef with comics. Comics are good. If a kid is reading comics, then guess what? That kid is reading, and that's important. Anything that will get someone to read is great, simply for the sake of them reading. So today, I dug up some of my nerdom, some of my geekdom, and I want to talk to you about Spider-Man Volume 1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Sara Pichelli. First of all, Miles Morales has so many different titles right now. I've been trying to collect the volumes, but there's Ultimate Spider-Man, there's Miles Morales, there's Spider-Man, there's Spider-Man Miles Morales, then he has the Young Avengers run, and I can't keep up with this. Back when I had disposable income in terms of being able to just purchase whatever I want when I want it because I didn't have responsibilities and I was an adult, yeah, totally. As an adult now, I gotta pick and choose what I'm gonna read. But since Miles' debut back in like 2012 or 2011, whatever it was, I've been pretty fond of him, and I've just been waiting for him to come into his own. So they've been trying a lot of different things, and since the movie Into the Spider-Verse, I was already a fan of him, but after that movie, it just reinvigorated me. Because it takes a very special kind of person to not have Spider-Man fatigue right now. I mean, Spider-Man has always been my favorite comic book character, but in the world we live in, where Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, and now Shamik Moore all exist, I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of tough to not want to put that aside. But Miles he's so fresh. And before we get further into that, what I really want to talk about, is race bending and representation. I've been doing a lot of research on it. I've been listening to some people share their thoughts online.
I think fixating ourselves on black representation in adaptations of historically white stories somewhat sidesteps the importance of representation in the first place. Not only does it imply that we seek validation in white people, but it also implies that we don't have any interesting or original stories to tell of our own. Which is exactly what, historically, the white people eliminating your history wanted you to think. That's why they eliminated your culture, because they wanted you to believe that you had nothing to contribute, that you could really just bring nothing new to the table. I think there's a bunch of traditional African fairy tales and books, and some of which I even remember reading as a child. If you really want to represent, do those. Not only do they represent, but it forces these industries to hire minorities to do these stories justice. But I feel no sense of validation in making a white character black. One could argue that's even just a byproduct of white supremacy, convincing you that success is intrinsically tied to our ability to imitate white people. I'm seeing some people out here saying finally. Like, finally what? There are good black stories to be told, and even the ones that are bad can be good.
That's kind of heavy, man. But there's a line in this volume that I just want to point out. There's a whole page about it. I mean, nothing really happens too much of this. It's, Spider-Man's in school. Genki's being a jerk because he wants to be popular. He's sharing his identity with someone from the X-Men or something like that. Black Cat and Hammerhead are on the loose, and Miles still has to go to school. But there's this part right here that I love. Miles gets into a fight. His costume rips and shreds. And his skin peeks through, and a blogger sees it, and she's like, oh my god, Spider-Man's brown, he's a person of color, and I love this, and we should all be excited. And I should mention that the vlogger, she seems like a person of color too. I think she's something. But what gets me is Miles' reaction. Miles says, he says it's bothering him. He doesn't really want to watch it. And Genki is saying, why is this bothering you? And Miles goes, I don't know, because who cares? And Genki says, I mean, I get it. Black Spider-Man, I don't want that. Want what? the qualification, you're losing me. This is, I don't want to be the black Spider-Man. I want to be Spider-Man. And then he mentions that he's also half Hispanic. So this is so awesome because for this to show up in a comic book, like, first of all, Marvel did this thing a couple of years ago where they essentially wiped out all their major characters and recasted them as minorities. So, you know, Peter Parker died, and then Miles Morales, and they brought him over to this universe. Iron Man had Ironheart with Riri, Thor, the Lady Thor. You know, Hulk, they had another character, Captain America with Falcon, Miss Marvel with Kamala Khan, who I love, by the way. But anyway, in doing that, some of them were palette swaps in the beginning, and they didn't really do anything different. For example, Miles is a nerdy kid who isn't really hitting it with the ladies, and he has to jump to school. That's Peter's story. This has been Peter's story. But this, it just starts tiptoeing into what they could really do with a character like that, and I love it. Now, Jason Reynolds also did a novel for Miles Morales, which was pretty fun because they captured the city really well, and you know, Miles is on the street and he has to deal with things that you would in a black neighborhood, being a black kid, black and Hispanic, because he's biracial, right? So I just love this so much because, I mean, for me personally, I'm gonna make this about me for a bit. As one of the only teachers of color in a predominantly white school, matter of fact, as one of the only teachers of color in a predominantly white county, it can be tough, and it's a burden to have to take on that label of being the black teacher. So not only do I have to know my craft and you know, try to excel at just the art of teaching and knowing the curriculum, but I gotta know the latest music, I gotta know the latest slang, I gotta know how to dress, I gotta know how to play basketball, I gotta know sports, and you know, you can't really escape that because what people see, they're gonna want something from that. They need it to match up. You know, and I'm not trying to be great at those things because they need me to, but it's, you know, I'm exploring what this racial identity means and what it means to be in this position for these kids. But at the same time, it's you know, black is a spectrum.
How dare you not take Will? He's full of potential.
That's why we want him. It's you we don't want.
Me? But I did everything. I cooked, I cleaned, I hand washed the toilets.
Everything your butler does for you. I'm not accepting no prep school Bel-Air bred sellout into my fraternity. Yo, homie, you can stop all that.
No, wait, Will. I got this one. You think I'm a sellout. Why? Because I live in a big house or I dress a certain way? Or maybe it's because I like Barry Manilow.
He been Barry White, y'all.
Being black isn't what I'm trying to be, it's what I am. I'm running the same race and jumping the same hurdles you are, so why are you tripping me up? You said we need to stick together, but you don't even know what that means. If you ask me, you're the real sellout.
Yeah, that's right, boy. And in the words of my illustrious cousin, we gonna make like a tree and leave.
Any culture is a spectrum, and there's you give and take depending on what circles you're in. So, you know, how I grew up and where I moved and the path that led me to that all played a factor in me being this kind of person that I am. So, you know, if I'm classified as the black teacher, it's, you know, it's kind of putting me in a pigeonhole because there's so many other aspects to me than just that. I just want to be a great teacher who happens to be black. I know this may be a bit complex, and I could talk about this more, but when I get to the end of the year of, you know, when I get to the end of this year in teaching African American studies for the first time, I'm pretty sure I'll have more to say. And I would be remiss to not mention that Sara Pichelli's art is beautiful. I mean, it took too long to find a black character in comics with a lineup and a fade that looks as good as this. I mean, most of the time you get the dudes with the widow's peak, or like a flat top or an afro, and come on, man, like not every kid looks like that. It's 2019. There's so many different hairstyles. Get us some dreads. Get us the braids on top. Get us the blowout fade. So this is awesome. Sara Pichelli is phenomenal at what she does and how she captures Miles, and I'm so glad every time she decides to draw him, because I love seeing someone that looks like that in a comic. It's so cool. For years I've never seen it. For years I've never seen anyone with a hairstyle like mine. They were supposed to be black, but I mean, where were they from? The 70s, the 80s? I'm looking at comics from the 90s and early 2000s, and I couldn't tell based off of the characters of color. So, thanks, Sara Pichelli. In the meantime, if you like Spider-Man, it's new, it's fresh, give this a try. Or Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales, or Miles Morales Spider-Man. Miles is a great character. He's gonna blow up. Get on this.